Good morning, everyone. Today I'm going to discuss certain panel characteristics of international criminal law. See, international criminal law, it is a product of the convergence of two different legal disciplines which have emerged and developed ostensibly along different paths to be complementary but coextensive and separate. So you see that like it is a product of two different legal disciplines. And with what are the two disciplines? One of them are the criminal aspects of international law, and the another one is the international aspects of national criminal law. So these two disciplines together collide to create the international criminal law. So the criminal what now the question is what is the criminal aspects of international law and what is the international aspects of national criminal law. Now see that the criminal aspects of international law, it consists of a body of international prescription which criminalize certain types of conduct irrespective of particular enforcement modalities and mechanisms. So you see that the criminal aspects of international law, it consists certain proscriptions, like that means like you can say the prohibitions or which criminalize certain types of conduct, like, and that makes it that intends that act or that makes that conduct a criminal act, and it is irrespective of any particular enforcement modalities and mechanisms. And the study of the origins and development of the criminal aspects of international law, it reveals that it deals essentially, if not exclusively, with substantive international criminal law or international crimes. So that means you see that the criminal aspects of international law, it generally deals with the notion of international crimes too. So it deals with the varieties of crimes which give it a criminal aspect. So this is one of the discipline of the international criminal law, that is the criminal aspects of international law. Okay, and this crime, as I said you, that like the criminal aspects of international law, you can deal or you can relate it with the international crimes. And as you know, when we have discussed the notion of international crimes, the crimes are like aggression, war crimes, unlawful use of weapons, crime against humanity, genocide, apartheid, slavery, slave related practices, torture, unlawful medical experimentation, piracy, hijacking, kidnapping of diplomats, taking of civilian hostages, unlawful use of the mails, drug offences, falsification and counterfeiting, theft of archaeological and national treasures, bribery of public officials, interference with submarine cables, and international traffic in obscene publications. So this very crimes, this very notions of crimes also, it gives a criminal aspect of international, like um, law itself. So another is like that, and moreover you see that although some of these crimes it's emerged from the customary international law, they are also included in one form or another in conventional international criminal law. Okay. So these very crimes, though it has been introduced, or it has been emerged from the customary international law, it has also included in conventional international law. Now see the basis for the consideration, like considering this 20 acts as international crimes according to the sources of international law are as follows. Like the crimes, as mentioned above, these crimes like aggression, war crimes, unlawful use of weapons, all these 20 acts are regarded to be as international crimes according to the sources of international law. And why these are considered to be? There are certain, reasons behind it. Most importantly, there are the very first one. The first base is that there might be some existing international conventions which consider the act in question an international crime. Now you see that like in international law and in international criminal law itself, the treaties or the conventions, it plays a very important role. They are considered to be one of the primary sources of international law. So if suppose according to certain treaties, certain crimes or certain conduct or act is considered to be crime, so it is recognized to be known as international crimes. So the very first reason why these 20 acts are regarded to be international crimes is that there might be some existing international conventions which consider the act in question an international crime. Secondly, the recognition under the customary international law that such conduct constitutes an international crime. So it's not only the international conventions, but the customary international law that such conduct it constitutes an international crime. As you know that when we have studied also the sources of international law under Article 38, 1 of the ICJ, there you find that one of the prominent source of international law is also customary laws. So when there is a recognition under the customary international law that such conduct constitutes an international crime, they will be noted to be international crimes. So this is also the criminal aspects of international law. Thirdly, if there is a recognition under the general principles of international law that such conduct is or should be deemed violative of international law and about which there is pending draft convention before the UN. So that time also it will be recognized as a crime. It will be recognized as an international crime. And fourthly, you see that if there is a prohibition of such conduct by an international convention, though not specifically stating that it constitutes an international crime. So these are certain various bases under which these 20 acts are considered to be international crimes. Now you see that like the very nature of all these acts and their definition in the applicable international instruments and under customary international law, it indicates what? That there are no common or specific doctrinal foundations that constitutes the legal basis for including a given act in the category of international crimes. Okay, so there is no common foundation that constitutes the legal basis. The only basis which now exists is empirical or experiential, conventional and customary international law implicitly or explicitly establish that the given act is a part of international criminal law. As you have seen that like on the if it is recognized by any convention or by any customary international law or it is prohibited under any conventions or by a conduct, so they are considered to be international crimes. Nevertheless, in examining separately the 20 international crimes which is previously mentioned, there are two alternative requirements for prescribed conduct. Namely, what are the two alternative requirements? Apart from that, that it must contain, firstly, it must contain either an international or transnational element in order for it to be included in the category of international crimes. In other words, the conduct in question must either rise to the level where it constitutes an offense against the world community, okay, or delicto justitia, or the commission of the act, it must affect the interest of more than one state. Okay, so you see that the conduct must give either rise to the level, it must be recognized as an offense against the world community, or it must affect the interest of more than one state. And regrettably, you see that international criminal legal doctrine, it has not further defined the meaning and content of each of these two elements, and no specific criteria exists to determine whether a type of conduct it raises to such a level of international opprobrium to considered within the meaning of international element. So there is one thing which is lacking here. Similarly, that word transnational, there is a certain undefined element which could encompass a multitude of activities which may affect the interest of more than one state. It may involve the transport activities or involve nationals of more than one state. This is potentially, it's a very elastic concept. Obviously, these elements need further doctrinal clarification, but it is not within the scope of this article to provide such, you know, clarification. Now, see, regardless of how like a given conduct it becomes an international crime or an empirical or experiential observation, it supports the conclusion that an international crime it is any conduct which is designated as a crime in a multilateral convention which is recognized by significant number of states. So you see that under international law there are a lot of member states. So if it is internationally recognized either by a convention or by number of states have recognized it, accepted it, they have ratified it, they will be considered to be as international crime. Now see that the object of international criminal justice it is no different that of any national criminal justice system. It is very same. The object is simple. It is to prosecute those who are accused of the criminal violations and eventually punish those found guilty and not simply to punish all those accused of such violation as the words ought pure imply. So you see that the simple main objective of the international criminal justice it is similar to that of any national criminal justice. It is to prosecute those who are accused of any criminal violations and eventually punish those persons who are found guilty. Under such a scheme, international crimes which are established either by any convention or any customary international law, it must be enforced by the national criminal laws of the states. It is very important. So if these international crimes are recognized internationally by the states, they should also be enforced by the national criminal laws of the state. The duty, to prosecute or either to extradite and to cooperate with each other's states in the prevention and suppression of such conduct is imposed upon the signatory states. So this is very important aspect of international criminal law. Moreover, you see an international criminal law convention which explicitly or implicitly recognizes the certain conduct as an international crime. It establishes the duty upon the signatory states to criminalize the prohibited conduct, to prosecute the accused violators, or to extradite the accused violators to other states desirous of prosecuting them, and to cooperate with each other's states in the prevention and suppression of such conduct. So you see that this particular international criminal law conventions, like if suppose a crime is recognized to be international crimes, and suppose an individual has committed a crime in a different country, so it is establishes the duty upon the signatory states to criminalize that prohibited conduct and also to prosecute the accused violators and also to extradite the accused violators. For example, the case of Vijay Mallya, Nirav Modi, the Vijay Mallya case of its extradition is also going on. So you see he is in London, so he need to be extradited to India. So you can relate this. So if the other state is a member state of that or a signatory state to that, like signatory state to that particular convention, that they are bound by it. It is mandated upon them so that they should extradite that particular criminal. Additionally, you see, such a convention could also recognize the establishment of a direct enforcement scheme, such as, International Criminal Court for the prosecution of such offences. So, as I already discussed with you in the last class, that one of the characteristics of international criminal law is also that there should be a proper enforcement mechanism. So there should be an establishment of a court. There is obviously we have got the International Criminal Court for this purpose. Now see, there are certain objectives of international criminal law conventions. What are they? The very first one is that to explicitly or implicitly declare certain conduct a crime under international law. Secondly, to criminalize the conduct under national law. Thirdly, to provide for the prosecution or extradition of the alleged perpetrator. Fourthly, to punish the person who is found guilty. Fifthly, to cooperate through the various modalities of judicial assistance in the enforcement of the convention. Sixthly, to establish a priority in theories of jurisdiction and perhaps recognize the applicability of universal jurisdiction. Seventhly, to refer to an international criminal jurisdiction. And eighthly, to exclude the defense of superior orders. So you see, the very first objective of the International Law Convention is that to explicitly or either implicitly declare a crime to be under the international law. It is very important under international criminal law to get recognition under in the international field that it is a international that is it is considered to be an international crime. So you see, this is the very first objective of an international criminal law convention. Secondly, you see, to criminalize the conduct under national law. So you see, this is the second objective of International Criminal Law Convention, that is to criminalize the conduct under the national law. That certain conduct should be recognized under the national domestic laws too, so that it amounts to criminalize that particular conduct. Thirdly, to provide for the prosecution or extradition of the alleged perpetrator. So you know that a crime, international crime, can be committed by an individual and they may move from one place to another. So the main, one of the objective is that to provide for the prosecution and also for the extradition of the alleged perpetrator. Fourthly, also the fourth objective is that to provide justice to the people, to provide justice to the victim. So to punish the person who is found guilty. Fifthly, as it is provided that there should be cooperation, through the various modalities of judicial assistance in the enforcement of the convention. So the judicial assistance is very important in this regard. As sixthly, it provides that there should to establish a priority in theories of jurisdiction, and perhaps there should be recognition of the applicability of the universal jurisdiction. And the seventh objective that it provides, it should refer to an international criminal jurisdiction. Okay, so these are certain objectives of the international law conventions. And like if there any convention, it follows certain features, or there is existence of any of these features in a particular convention, it makes a part of an international criminal law. And each category of international crimes, it seems to have developed a life and pattern of development of its own. In some cases, such as the regulation of the armed conflict, the prohibition against slavery and slave-related practices, and international control of drugs, there has been not only a number of succeeding conventions, but there has also been an attempt to develop some direct mechanisms of enforcement. To a large extent, the International Committee of the Red Cross, it is a very workable and effective example of a quasi-direct enforcement mechanism regarding the regulation of armed conflict. So this is also very important that like International Committee of the Red Cross, it is one of the example of a quasi-direct enforcement mechanism regarding the regulation of the armed conflict. The another is that the international narcotic system, with the existence of a commission and other structure, is another example of direct enforcement. However, the political considerations have largely hampered the opportunities for rendering that system more effective. In the slavery area, the International Labour Organization development of additional instruments for the prevention, suppression, and control of slave-related practice is another example of progressive development. So it is observed that, where there has been a progressive development of international instruments, there has also been a progressive development of legal provisions reflecting more specificity in their content and in the duties they establish. Thus, you see where there are more conventions on a particular subject, the likelihood is greater that the terminology embodying the specific legal obligations concerning that criminalizations, prosecution, punishment, extradition, judicial assistance, and jurisdiction, it is more specific in each succeeding convention. So you see that it is interesting to note that the evolution of the two schemes for the enforcement of the international criminal law, the direct and indirect enforcement scheme, have also, it has conceptually shaped the international criminal law. Historically, the direct enforcement system, it was predicated on a vision of world order which sought to be transcend political and ideological barriers. Now, see, soon after the World War II, the hopes and expectations of many in the world community were for the development of a direct control system involving the International Criminal Code and an international machinery of a criminal justice. The first effort, excluding the Nuremberg and Tokyo war crime trials, was in the Convention for the Creation of the International Criminal Code of November 16, 1937, which recognized the establishment of an international criminal code. The convention, this was only ratified by India, but it never entered into effect. Therefore, there were two efforts by the UN in 1951 and 1953 to prepare a draft statute for an international criminal code, and drafts were tabled, and no further effort has been made to revive them. So, in a very modest way, the Convention on the Prevention and Suppression of Genocide of December 9, 1948, it specified in the Article 6 that there should be established an international penal tribunal which should have the authority to adjudicate violations of the conventions. So only the Convention on the Prevention and Suppression of Apartheid of November 30, 1973, it specified in Article 5 for the creation of an international penal tribunal. So this is all about the certain penal characteristics of international criminal law.